to take a close look at Ina certainly, and Mikhail Alexandrovich Fedotov too, who, first I would say that he's my friend, he's been a friend of mine and of the school, and then you know what highest position he's taking. I suppose it's the highest ranking person among the school's friends whom we can meet here, and he agreed to travel here, and even after the fact, though a week ago, as it was announced in the press, he met with President of the Russian Federation, as it was announced in the press. And I think that this plays a huge importance, this attitude towards us. In point of fact, I want to tell you things which are very far away from this. To make him take up this position, well, it has to be a professional person, a very courageous man, because as we have heard during this seminar, and we understand it from the practice, civil life and opening opportunities of civil life. And in the long run, it would be impossible to abolish civil life in a modern state. It meets with resistance not only from the government, it also meets resistance in the understanding of the society per se. In point of fact, we are existing in a certain sort of gap when, say, the tax authority come with inspection, and if they cannot find anything wrong, they would have another inspection, and you can see that they do not understand why we are needed if we're not a state. We do not belong to the state. And if the audit is there and the money is there and things have been properly spent, the funds, but if you're so good, why do you not belong to the state? And this, in point of fact, is serious, because this is the level of existence of the society. In the same way, the people from the prosecutor's office, they want to announce us foreign agents, and we say, no, we would not agree with that, because we are not about that. And they just do not understand it, not only in their official capacity, but in their sort of personal capacity. Then why are you needed? What is the point of the school? And I think that the school is needed to develop this civic, modern activity which works in a country and works in dialogue with the state, and works exactly in those areas where the state doesn't do anything. And this is not only the problem of the government, this is the problem of the society per se. And I'm confident that, God forbid, if right now society is, say, somebody should ask them, who are we, what we do, the school, the society would condemn what we do, because not even knowing understanding what we do. So from this historic perspective, we see several people who, because of their personal understanding, they want to build these bridges that would close those gaps, that would ensure understanding. And at this point, indeed, personality matters. It does. It matters historically, because this position that Mikhail Alexandrovich is not taking, it has already been introduced, but it will depend strongly upon who takes this position. Is it a person who is convinced that we should see civil society and civil life developing in the country? Or will this position be taken by somebody who will turn it into a purely formal legal position? This is where I want to say and express my gratitude to Mikhail Alexandrovich. On top of that, he was the sponsor and the author of the best law ever to be adopted back in the 1990s, the law on information, which had been in use at that time by journalism and by mass media. And at that time, many people thought that we were given a chance and we shall overcome it all very fast. But Mikhail Alexandrovich, for that matter, with his colleagues, enshrined this chance in law. I don't know how many times attempts have been made to curtail this law. Oh, there's really too many, but because he was so good, because we have an excellent lawyer for us. And I say, well, he wants to draft a presentation. I say, we don't need your presentation, indeed, because he thinks that law is poetry. But we don't think law is poetry, and for this reason, I think that as a true lawyer, he believes this, and I very strongly urge him, and Inna very strongly urges him to speak here in his personal capacity as Mikhail Alexandrovich Fedotov, a person who suffers, who worries about something, who feels something, who is educated. Well, I've put it all out loud. Everybody has heard it. You can't go back on it. Thank you. Now this is for you. Indeed, this agenda gives the right post that I hold. Could you please sit closer to the mic because we cannot hear you? Yes, thank you. I'm indeed the head of the chairman of the council under the president of the Russian Federation to promote civil society and human rights, and at the same time the secretary of the Union of Journalism in this country. I should say that our council last year was 20 years old. It all started back as the commission under the president of the Russian Federation on human rights, and as it was set up due to presidential decree 1400. Probably people my age recall that, but to young people I would rephrase this question. Probably you may have heard about it. At school they told you there was Presidential Decree 1400, that when they dispersed the Congress of People's Deputies, the Supreme Soviet, they were tragic events from the 3rd and 4th of October 1993, when in the morning they shelled the White House, not in Moscow, but not in Washington, it was in Moscow. The White House is the seat of the Russian government, and at that time it was the seat of the Supreme Soviet, like Russian parliament at the time. And this is when we set up this commission, and the idea evolved they set up when they published this decree 1400, and this great people were locked up in this White House. This is when they set up an operative group, an operative headquarters that sat in the Kremlin, in the Security Council room. I remember it. We met every day, and we came up with suggestions for the president, what needed to be done. I was lucky that I kept it in my personal archive, the minutes of those meetings. Quite amazing documents, should they ever be published. That will be very interesting. So, something gave me a hint that I will find the origins of this. Something told me that we seem to have spoken about it. And indeed, I discovered those documents, and this is when we mention it. It was mentioned under a different name at that time. But this is what it sounded like: to invite deputies to become part of the Commission on Human Rights, including, amongst other things, to control the elections. At the time, if you remember, this presidential decree 1400, it implied a referendum on the constitution and election of the First Duma. At that time, and this is where I found that mentioned, and somebody put in writing the name Kovalyov. And Kovalyov, Sergei Adamович Kovalyov, is a well-known human rights activist, dissident, Soviet times. He was elected first chairman of the commission, so you may understand that on this post you have to be worthy of such predecessors. Kovalyov was replaced by Vladimir Alexeyevich Kartashkin, a well-known professor of the international law. The commission at the time changed dramatically. Representatives of government offices and agencies became members of the commission. In 2002, Ella Alexandrovna Pamfilova replaced Kartashkin. Nowadays she is the ombudsman on human rights in Russia. And it is due to Ella Alexandrovna, we should thank Ella Alexandrovna, for transforming this commission into a council. And that council fully got completely free of the representatives of the government offices. It is now staffed by only members of the public. This happened in 2004. In 2010, Ella Alexandrovna resigned, and her heavy burden, sort of, was given to me. To be honest, I tried to refuse this post, although it looks very much like the Inspector General by Gogol. And at meetings with Medvedev, and Medvedev, the then president, he said, "I will find it easier to find common language with you. We are both lawyers, so we will surely understand each other better." Because I suggested somebody else as a candidate, somebody who was well respected in that council, well appreciated and loved. And it was our general choice, collegiate choice. We all wanted to see him as chair. But the president decided otherwise. So why am I saying this? What kind of organization we are in? At that, when in 2011 election was held, in 2012, President Putin assumed the post of the president, so some people decided to withdraw from the council. There were 13, at the time we were 40. And out of these 40, 13 withdrew, quit for a number of reasons. There were political reasons, there were reasons related to a large number of business trips. People really felt they burnt out. Some people had fallen ill. One of the members of the council said, "I am leaving this council because this council doesn't do anything," to which I had no other comment rather than this. I told him, "Well, look, I know that those people who don't do anything in this council, they think that the council doesn't do anything. But those who work with it, they say, oh, the council is doing so much." For that matter, I brought you 2 copies of the brochure that I yesterday gave to the president. I certainly leave them here. Unfortunately, I have only 2 copies. So this is where they tell you about the work of what this council did from 7th of May 2020 to 7th of May 2014. And it's not a report. This is like onboard log, I would put it this way. It just tells you about what the council did during this time, in these 2 years. Certainly we have a very important mission, but when back in 2012, 13 people withdrew. And Medvedev urged them not to leave. They said, we need this council exactly with those members who worked at the time, because we had excellent people who worked there, excellent, really. And nobody wanted to replace anybody or to... But since 13 people left, we had to carry out rotation. And this is where idea arose that we should do it all openly, on the competitive basis, so that we should use internet technology. Nowadays, even the law about basics of social control, it's now part and parcel of it. And this bylaw on internet voting, and even the public chamber already in part was elected in part through internet technologies. But for the first time it was tested in our council, this internet online voting. Probably this is right, because you must first try it on the grandfathers, we say, but then you should eat it on your own. So this is a Russian joke. So I should say that if we say just simply follow the path to do what we were told, nothing good would have come out of it. What we did make sure that there should be some point about this, because they told us there should be free elections online. Let people propose candidates online and let them vote for them. And we in the Council realized that at that time, rating number 1 would be held by Alla Borisovna Pugacheva, then Malachov. Rating number 3 in some kind of football player, and so on. And so what? What do we do about those people who are really very popular, but we don't need to sing. We don't have to have a talk show and run about the soccer field. We are doing something very different. We are, first of all, experts and consultants. We should provide recommendations and advice what needs to be done under a certain situation. And this is when we invented this step. We split these 13 vacancies for 13 nominations and then said, look, say Svetlana Alexeyevna Ganushkina withdrew from our council. I suppose she was the biggest expert on the problems of migration. She is in charge of the organization for the law and the respective foundation. And this is when we said, okay, since Ganushkina left, we want somebody to replace her, an expert on migration. So instead of, say, I don't know, for example, Fyodor Lukyanov, who dealt with international problems, we need an expert in international problems, international advocacy for human rights. So this is how we sort of created a profile for each vacancy. And then we said you can propose candidates, not only just anybody can do it, no. Only NGOs and ombudsmen and NGOs that have certain experience and have been around for at least 5 years, otherwise would have been overwhelmed by a number of these newly set up organizations, just especially created for this purpose, and who have experience in human rights activism in this particular area. For this reason, we set up a commission in this council who would do a background check on every application we received, and as a result, we got about over 100 candidates who sought membership, and about 100 were after background check, were put up for election online voting. And then, after further consultations, we got absolutely natural result. For example, Nikolai Svanidze and Leonid Parfenov, they got many votes in favor. That is clear for obvious reason, because everybody knows, the public are aware of them. Yana Lantrapova received many votes. It was clear because the Young Guard and the United Russia, Nasha and others, all youth organizations had voted for her. It's something we understand why people voted this way, but among there were people who, I don't even know how all of a sudden they got a huge number of votes, and but they did get them. People did vote for them. How could this be done? Because of a certain internet technologies. Because when we said, look, let's all of us vote for the verification system that would verify those who vote, they told us, oh, there's no need for that. It's too long, it's too difficult. So as we had this done in the simple manner, then we got what we got. With some rigging. And then we presented these lists to the president, where we had 3 top candidates who received most votes. And the council had our own preference, sort of, whom we would want to see among those 3. Say, in this nomination, we would like to see candidate A, and this, in another nomination, we would like to support candidate B. And then Putin did something unexpected. He said, let's enroll all the 3. So instead of 13, we got 39. Actually, we then, on top of that, got person number 40. Nowadays, the council has 61 members. But it does not at all mean that the council turned into some kind of decorative structure who sit once a year.
And for you to understand, in July, which has not finished yet, the Council held 4 sessions. and it's without the work of the working group and commissions. According to our charter, we are supposed to hold just a single meeting in 2 months. We are holding 4 sessions in 1 month. So it means that we do 8 times more of work than we are supposed to. Again, and for your understanding the scope of our topics, each session is prepared by a standing commission as well as the draft resolution. So after the meeting, we are supposed to vote for the resolution to be forwarded to the president. And before the president, they go to various agencies and ministries who study those resolutions and voice their opinions. So that means that there is some programs that, but still the steam engines efficiency factor is our objective and target, which we has not reached yet. But to a certain extent, we have succeeded, and the law on the foundations of social and public control is our product, and amendments to the procedural code relating to the arrest as a measure of detention. We wrote that amendment that it cannot apply to entrepreneurs, and that's also our product. And last year's amnesty is was also orchestrated by us, so our steam engine is moving. That's the main outcome. So it allows us to make progress and to develop democracy and civil society in the country slowly, with great effort, but still. So there was just a topic on forest and peat fires. The meeting was prepared by the Commission on Environment. The other topic was the prevention of home violence and family violence. We understand that's the roots of violence, and we heard terrible reports from the law enforcement agencies. Because it so happens that most crime to underage, to minors, are committed in the families, and it's also about crimes against women. So if we manage to reduce the rate of family violence, we would be able to change the situation in our society, and that's the task of the great scope for us. But we are to be careful in our approaches. Our legislators do not always understand that, so they pass and approve laws, draft laws in a hurry, so they are not accurate, and inaccurate laws are mass destruction weapons, while accurate laws is high precision weapons, which hit the target, while inaccurate laws, they just destroy the environment, no matter if the environment is to blame or not. And unfortunately, there are quite a number of such laws. That's a law on bloggers that was recently passed. It's senseless and it's very cruel. I used to say that our legislators remind me of the formula of a Russian rebellion: senseless and merciless, and something is to be done with that. So in every case, the Council tries to introduce and incorporate some reasonable elements into matters. Sometimes we succeed. In 2011, we removed the article on insinuations in the criminal code. It was brought back then. We removed that, thanks to the effort of the Council, and it was brought back by some our opponents. And by the way, we drafted some amendments for these articles' language, and so that the article is related with some deliberate actions. Because as for today, there is no notion of the action being deliberate or not deliberate. If something is done from jealousy, it's one thing. So I put slander on some person out of jealousy because that person took away my wife from me. But if that slander and misinformation was created by a journalist, perhaps that reporter had lack of evidence, it's not slander, it's a civil and legal delict and is to be approached in a different way. So we succeeded partially, but at least it was some success. At the same time, we propose criminal prosecution is to be imposed on, is to be withdrawn from the criminal code. We introduced an article on the prevention of journalists from covering events with the act of violence. Now we would like to end also the criminal prosecution for some action against journalists because of their being critical to somebody. But still, we shall see if we succeed or not. That's about home violence, family violence. We were discussing the reform in the penitentiary system. We were also discussing some in Salihard, it's behind the Urals. We discussed the program to commemorate the victims of political repressions. Before that, we discussed problems of migration, including internal migration, registration laws for migrants, and we discussed the situation in the market of forged documents, forged papers. You can see advertising on every corner of the street. And the distinguished director of the Federal Migration Service, Mr. Ramadanov, got offended with the council members because they just read those advertisements and they visited those addresses and registered and had Mr. Ramadevsky registered in one of the apartments illegally, and he got offended on the members for that. But I don't think he was right, because we need to do something to counter such illegal actions. And that means that the Council faces the broad range of various issues and challenges. We have 20 standing commissions operating and a number of working groups. One of them deals with the Crimean affairs, and the other considers the situation in Ukraine. We are helping to establish a humanitarian corridor, and famous Lisa Glinka, referred to as Dr. Lisa, is dealing with that. And the working group on Ukraine is headed by Maxim Shevchenko and Andrei Yurov, the two gentlemen who takes entirely opposite political positions, but they can really work as a tandem, and they do a lot of work in that temporary working group on Ukraine. And thanks to such examples, and I can think of a lot of them, because when new people came to be members of the council, we saw some personal conflicts among various members. We are lucky that they didn't fight, but heated debates were frequent the case. And I took those conflicting parties with me to various places so that they could attend places where the tension is quite high. In particular, when it was time to investigate the situation in the prison number 6 in the town of Kopeysk, people who came with me, some of them didn't talk to each other before and didn't shake hands. But with that very difficult situation, they dropped their antipathy and began working together, and they realized that those problems to be addressed require joint effort. That's the only way to achieve anything. And the prison number 6 story, we actually wrote a report to the president, and some criminal lawsuits were filed. Frankly speaking, right now those lawsuits are being slowed down now, but we are monitoring the situation, and I don't think that we will give up our effort. Well, if you don't mind, I would like to read out for you some letters which were received by my wife from our friend who lives and works in the Donetsk region of Ukraine. She is a vice mayor of a small town, and she is responsible for social problems, so she deals with healthcare and other matters of the kind. Since she has been our friend for a long time, and I can say that she is a very bright and interesting person. She's quite smart, she's businesslike and very merry person. So the first letter she wrote us. In this letter, he first wrote, "Hello from a burning tank." When I read that line, I thought that other people had to know that it's not propaganda. We turn on federal TV channels and receive a great amount of propaganda, typical of any information war. It's a fact, unfortunately. And in those letters, you can find some information about that too. So if you don't mind, I can read those letters out to you. First letters I posted on my blog and the website of the council, and then she asked me not to make those letters public. And she wrote to me, "I don't want to follow the destiny of Louis Carvalan, once head of the Communist Party of Chile." Hello, Masha. Thank you very much for your news from your home. Thank you for your email address. Get prepared. I'll be sending to you some moments from the reality show. Don't mind grammar mistakes and commas, because that's my problem. When I'm nervous, I am not attentive clicking on the letters, and then I'll send in the letters, and after that, when I read them, I get embarrassed too. And I can confirm that if you read a letter, you can see a lot of grammar and punctual mistakes there, because punctuation in the Russian language, they do play a great role. Sure, certainly what's going on now, nobody can foresaw. For half a year, people have changed entirely. Even in the level of the population, we are fighting each other. We became enemies, all friends and neighbors. In the places where Russian channels are not on air, people are confident that Putin eats babies taken from Ukraine. In our case, Putin rating is 300%. His father, he's very popular. People make slogans and they are quite sincere. It's not certainly for political value, but Masha, there is so much soul in there in those slogans. As well, as soon as Yanukovych escaped, it was announced that all his party members will be imprisoned. They were not guilty, so they were just fired. I was also in the Party of Regions, so I was fired. 2 months. For 2 months, I spent on a sick list. But I'm having lessons in the academy, and there is a summer vacation, and I read the Constitution, but no way it was written Then came the Donetsk People's Republic. Our executive committee was seized first. Our mayor ran away, and I was supposed to come to office since my leave and vacation were over. And frankly speaking, I'm bored with lying. So for 1 month I've been working already. Refugees, wounded, fools from either side, crowds of enthusiasts are poorly organized who wouldn't like hear anything. It's like in the October Revolution of 1917. So the revolutionaries are drunken sailors, and the National Guard is Petlura troops of 1917. And most of them are young people who didn't want to fight. Before the mercenaries came, it was just calm. The armed forces made plans to invade the city of Anavacha. People came to put to the streets, took their improvised weapons, stopped the troops, and that was that. And people were feeding those soldiers. So smart guys also didn't want to come to the Russian-Ukrainian regions. Then mercenaries came. They are just terrible. They are bombing and killing ourselves. It's not from the Russian use. In my town, there are 200 registered refugees, those who came to, who are registered officially. They are telling horrible stories. After that, I don't think we'll be a united country once again. People are running away. Apartments, real estate cost nothing. The only idea is how to live. There is an armistice now, but the Donetsk People's Republic didn't violate that armistice, and we see a lot of armored personnel carriers without any signs and insignia. They do whatever they like. They are bandits. They take goods. They take money from people. About myself, I'm dealing with refugees 24 hours a day. I accumulated a stock of medications to help the wounded, and it's all based on the enthusiasm of the population. The budget is empty, and thanks to the Russians, they send insulin to those who suffer from sugar diabetes. For 20 years in the Ukrainian country, there is no instructions on the civil defense and emergency situations. Nobody knows what to do. Our military commissioner ran away, police is closed and shut. So I found in the internet what stocks you need in the basement, and I asked my friend to print it out. So on the list were a chocolate, flour, vodka, and tablets. After that publication, a businessman came to me and brought sugar and flour, being grateful for advertising of his business. So I stopped doing that. Masha, that's the stream of conscience. I am stopping that. I'm missing you. Thank you very much. But with all the problems, nobody is losing weight. It was the first letter. It was written on July 1st. Let me see. June 25. June 25. Do you want to hear more? My wife wrote a letter in response asking her permission for having that letter published. And she writes, okay, make it published, correct my grammar mistakes. The teacher, my teacher of the Russian language should not be affected, but you can just write to me what I should inform you of. About the wedding of Malinovka, that's the documentary. Wedding of Malinovka was a Russian movie. And because my wife wrote to her that the events in the Ukraine was just the remake of Wedding of Malinovka. Wedding of Malenovka is a documentary about our life, but as well as soon as the liberation by the Ukrainian army began, liberation of ourselves, the security agents became asking money from businessmen. One firm said that they will not give money but medications, and those security guys after some time came back to them and offered that firm buy those medications back at half price. And that story was made public, but people responded saying that were aware of even more terrible stories. Our farmers were making a joke. They said that in Kiev they somehow believe that we cannot sow the harvest, and the farmers said that bring more tanks to our regions and we will have a greater sowing campaign, because those people, tankers and those who operated armored personnel carriers were selling kerosene to those farmers at very low price. People, those fighting people are uniformed in the same way, they are speaking same language, and nobody understands what's going on, who is fighting whom. When refugees were coming, I was struck by the sincerity with which people were helping those refugees. And they were bringing all the objects of necessity. Even washing machines and electric oven were brought. But again, there were some tricks too. A family was dwelled on the point where those stocks were stockpiled, and the family was accommodated. Then those who accommodated those people came to that point and said that, all those people who were living in their apartment were drinking hard. And when we checked, it became clear that the family of alcoholics came to that town from someplace else and found very comfortable conditions there for drinking parties. And, for us, even when we check all those, verify all those refugees, 50% of them have criminal past, and so they are not going to work. But if they go to Russia, Russians will also have problems. And there is something not for the record. You know that there were no prophylactics of AIDS, HIV, and TB. And Slavyansk was most secure place. So if those people come to Russia, please test them for HIV and TB. And we used to think of intellectual women as somebody who was sitting with books and with something else, with knitting. But when they come to us after 1 week staying with us, they turn into not refugees, but very demanding consumers. Sorry for those sad ideas. I asked the family, have you bought foodstuffs too? And we have purchased all those stuffs. But the family told me, no, we have not purchased those foodstuffs. I'll change the name. No, Tatiana Ivanovna, we didn't take no stuffs with us. Meat and flour is still with us. Is left from the end of the world. 20 years have passed since the end of the world, and they still have their foodstuffs and reserves. But everybody exercises hatred. Sometimes they watch TV channels and also become indignant at Russian news. Then we analyze two channels, one from Ukraine, the other from Russia, and then we come to some average. And we can saw that the commentators have been changed, but they all speak about hysteria. Please make your television broader and so that it could reach Western Ukraine. About Crimea, our people keep on going there and come with fully admiring that. and laws are tougher in Russia, both concerning rents, concerning restaurants. Masha, if you remember, I brought a girl to Spivakov, the violin player, and he played in a concert in Sevastopol and invited that girl, and he invites her now to enter a conservatoire. It's good, but she's too small, too young now. And I'm writing to you, but I'm listening to Chonkin's, to the book about Chonkin by Novich. Thank you. Shall I read more? Next letter. July 13th. Hello, Masha. A couple of words from me. To describe in one dialogue the events of the recent day, I can refer to the dialogue with my girlfriend. What's happening with you? A bombardment? Are you in the basement? No, I'm in the kitchen. I'm making canned cucumbers. Why? I'm tired, to go to the basement 5 times a day, and because of that I spoiled some of my cucumbers. Today is Peter and Paul day. People are returned from the church. I'm going to the market and listening to what they are talking about. And they say we will have another attack today. Why? Because Poroshenko is Peter and it's his day. I laughed at that, but I didn't have to do so. Bombardment started from the afternoon, and we're lucky that they're shelling neighborhoods. When Slavyansk fell, and even those who was given water to separatists, everybody were terrified. Opponents were revived. On the contrary. So both traitors and separatists, they are all the same, and I'm in the bus station for 2 days. There is the poll, and people are recruiting for People's Army. Many men join the militants. Those who have money go to the Black Sea or in the mountains just to see who is the winner. Rinat Akhmetov, the oligarch, withdrew his key staff to other cities. Others have vacations till September. National Guard is shelling his factories and enterprises very strongly, although there are no separatists at all. So in various cities and towns there are multiple coup d'etats. Mostly Klitschko supporters are pressured. Elections to the parliament. Looks like the game is as follows. Udarov Klitschko was removed. Communist Party is forbidden. Who shall we vote for? For freedom. For Batkivshina of Yulka Tymoshenko, we have no our own party, and if Simonenko stays, southeastern regions will vote for the communists, and Poroshenko realizes that, and he takes every effort to destroy the Communist Party. So we could it may be the final elections of the Second International, and that's the term. I prepared everything in the basement. I brought straw, mattresses, pillows there, matches. But when I finished, my mother refused to come down to the basement. I said, "Mother, it's not Mercedes cars that matter now. It's the safety in the basement." That's my mother, but she is invincible. I don't remember if I wrote about foodstuffs to you. We bought everything, and as mice, we are eating everything, something that we would never eat before. And there is canned meat, canned milk. and friends and neighbors always meet with each other just to discuss the situation. When you are together, it's not so terrible. Well, when we meet, we have a lot of tea and we eat our foodstuffs. About power, there is no power in town, as well as in other towns. The region is without any control. Governor Taruta perhaps is a good man, but he is no manager. No police, no judiciary, no mayors. Emergency situations agency is just neutralized, and most of the doctors left the region. It's going to be a disaster. There is a second wave of refugees to Russia. They are good specialists, engineers, doctors, and Russia, I think, will accommodate them all and deploy them all. And, you know, it takes so little time now, and the average age of those who live, 35, and about 40% of them have higher education. Oh, well, there is a blast, perhaps a bridge was hit. Goodbye. No good news. Perhaps tomorrow will be some.
So tomorrow, we're getting another letter. Hello, Masha. The news. We've gotten humanitarian aid from Russia. Up to 40,000 hryvnia. Surgery supplied. Then a bridge was blown up by drunkards. And in the morning, they thought a tractor to be a tank, so they blew up the bridge. The bridge is small, it is internal and far away from us, but the detonation was so strong. The interesting thing is that the street, the dwellers of the houses didn't hide in the basements, but stood in the open throughout the day talking. The three combatants were shot right there. So let me talk about my routine news before we pass on to the geopolitics. No documents. Who is this man who has come? We don't know what we can do, but in the morning I didn't give my documents. Now about the Ukraine. Kolomoisky's bank section was blown up. It appears this man, Kolomoisky, can well unite all of the Ukraine, as everybody hates him, both in the east and in the west. The husband of my sister and their two sons dug up a basement, but 5 people can go into hiding. But my sister has told them about this for 3 months, and yesterday, when the bridge was blown up, Sasha decided to do that. And finally, the heat is upon us. A voice from the basement: "We're here." I can see that this is a deep burrow with the good cast iron steps. It's an excellent apartment down there. Teta Ola, what is it? Oh, this is, he wanted some borscht, and you can't be outside. It's very hot. So I'm still laughing. The heat, the faces are red. Uncle Vanya in his shorts and a big ladle of borscht in the basement. Yesterday, right after the explosion, it turned out that many people don't know, much as to what happens. How do you know? We ask them, and they say, "We've just come from the wedding in this area." So there was a wedding in the village, and the war came upon. So they continued with the wedding. The only thing that they didn't have the fireworks. On the first day, this was a European wedding with the bridal dress, and the second day was a national wedding, an ethnic flavor wedding. So today, the people under the bullets went to the second day of wedding. It's a pity that Novodvorskaya is dead. I decided to read about her, so I may really change my opinion about her. Good for her. I read her video, I heard her video address to the Ukrainian people, and it is hardly becoming to instigate the people in Kiev. All right, bye-bye. You can't believe what I'm going to read now. I'm going to read the code on the military situations. Today is a football match. This is, by the way, the day of the final match for the World Cup. It's a football day. Apparently, nobody will fight. I am for the Germans, even though we are less numerous, probably. Merkel and Putin. Should I read you more? And the last letter that we received yesterday. "29th of July. Dear Masha, it is sometimes a shame to write about women's joys. Today I went to work and the siren had us get back. So I went to get my friend. Should we go back home by taxi and sit in the basement? So we walked down the road. We spoke about the war. Throughout the road, of course, men are cowards, and Yatsenyuk does not understand that you cannot leave this casino. Here we saw a little dish shop where they're selling dishes. The foodstuffs are down, the gas is getting more expensive, the cornfields are actually burning, and I get out of the shop, I look at each other, we look at each other and we start crying over this jar of Italian pickles. I have a new great pickles, and this is a great thing that I can look into the fridge mine. What are you doing? I'm drinking tea, I'm having tea. It is good that I cooked this jar on. So we start laughing again. They removed everything in the house, and they... So this argument is especially important. Women bought some new stuffs, and so you have to put on your new things in case the ambulance comes. My aunt is a civil servant. She is a classical civil servant. I called her yesterday. She has a very good voice, very soft voice. Tatiana Ivanovna, we are in a difficult situation, but the control over the city and so on and so forth. And then I hear, and I can no longer write. It is exactly now that I'm so happy to write and read about something beautiful rather than what I have to do. Don't be worried about me. They don't shoot well, so they may well not get into me. This was the last letter. Now, answers to your questions. We start with Georgia. Vachtank Tsotsonava is from Sukhumi. I'm from Georgia. I think that The Ukrainians may have started this discussion, but I will allow myself to be the first. You have the one to speak. You have read the letters of a person who is close to your family, and I think that the first problem of the system of Yanukovych was that the vice mayor of a city must be literate. I think that these letters would have touched a string in any human. I'm a pacifist myself, and I think that this is a human tragedy. I went through war myself, and I think that you're quite right to have read these letters, which are extremely moving, almost heartrending. But what I could tell you is how my grandmother, who is 70, who in 1993 was kidnapped in Abkhazia, then she was brought back through a ransom, and as 400,000 Georgian refugees do not have the right to get back to their houses starting from 1993, so I could write and read about her prayers and how she thinks and hopes and dreams of getting back to her house in Abkhazia. But then you might read my letters to somebody in the Kremlin. What was said in these... May I respond? If reading these letters in the Kremlin could help the issue, we could do that. I don't think that you would be much enthused with such letters, because this issue is not solved. Well, I just don't know if reading these letters could solve the issue. It's a lot more difficult. Why did I want to read these letters to you? For you to have some sort of independent information from this region. Alexei Tupitsyn from Irkutsk region. The introduction of the system with the public control election of ombudsman by those who are in the penitentiary. I'm not quite sure about your... What exactly are we talking about? The ombudsman this year, there were elections through your structure. No, I think you're wrong. The ombudsman is not elected through our structure or our institution in any way. The ombudsman is appointed by the State Duma. No, it is representative to the Public Council. No. We do not participate in any nomination of any ombudsman. I think that you've mistaken me for somebody. Or are you talking about the formulation of our council? Well, this was not this year, but in 2012. And all we did is that we selected the candidates for the membership in the council. We don't have authorized persons. And I proposed some... in the civil society, there are no generals. We're all privates. Thank you, Stanislav. I am alumnus of 2012. My question is about the recently adopted law on the foundations of the public control in Russia, in the Russian Federation. I took part in the public chamber formation, and I was elected to the public chamber of the town of Zvenigorod, which is not far from where we are. And when this law was adopted, I did not find, unfortunately, any members of the public chambers. But the public chamber of Zvenigorod, where I work, I'm the only independent candidate. All other members are civil servants or dependent persons. So my abilities are quite limited. I cannot even send inquiries to the state institutions in my official capacity. So my question is, what ideas of the Presidential Council have not been entered into the final text of the law, and why? Well, the final text does not incorporate many of these concepts, because our original draft was a lot more powerful, and the subjects of the public control included not just the members of these chambers, but indeed every Russian citizen. However, the draft law and the actual law are have quite a few discrepancies in their text. Still, I regard this law as an intermediate step. Up until the recent time, we only had one forum for the public control, which was the law on the public control and the monitoring of the human rights observance for the inmates in the penitentiary institutions. So, indeed, nowadays we have a different forum, which is the law on the foundations of the public control. And this serves the purpose of entering them into the legislation on the public control. So we have opened the door to the next room. And nowadays, this room has to be filled with life. Of course, I'm not satisfied with the law in its present shape or format, but now we have an opportunity to expand it, to indeed fill it with substance. And it is by far not the only claim laid to this law, and there are many contradictions, gaps, and it is not in vain that this law does not even have a term for it entering into effect. Usually, laws have a term whereby, say, the law is entered into effect from the day of publication, or else with a delayed term. Otherwise, any law enters into force 10 days after it has been published. But I think that they just forgotten to write about this. And of course, I did suggest to work this law further, because there is one important mistake, or one imminent error, which stipulates that the public control is perceived as monitoring of the actions of the state bodies. What do you mean by observance? You can switch on the TV and observe these and nothing else, but you can monitor it on the TV. Now, the actual importance is monitoring as to what extent do these actions comply with the public interest. And at the level of the second reading, we spoke about the public interest. We tried to define the public interest and try and understand when the actions of a state body may run against or comply with such public interest, and then it might be better understood why do we execute this monitoring. Unfortunately, it was never entered into the law, and this strange monitoring, which is called the public control, has been entered in the law as it is published there now. So, and I think that this is a wrong approach. Arivik, Markaryan from St. Petersburg, on the eve of the municipal elections in St. Petersburg, when we is one of the so-called show moments that even Mr. Churov sent a letter to Attorney General of St. Petersburg trying to make clear a situation. So it as well appears that the falsifications continue, and this is not just my opinion of a candidate whose protocols were forged, but also as a sociologist who registers such blatant violations of the electoral law. So I encourage your council to consider these issues more often. We have a special commission for the electoral law, and you may turn to it, and we shall consider all your proposals. But of course, we cannot in any way influence the outcome of the elections. But as a problem, let us take a look at it. But unfortunately, this is not the field or the sphere where we have problems. I have long come to a conclusion that if we have a strong civil society and a poor educational system, then we shall have good elected bodies. If we have a strong civil society. If we don't have strong civil society, then a good electoral system will not help us, unfortunately. So I'm always for the strong civil society, and we'll have good MPs, good parliament. The civil society is the basis of everything. And the civil society is not about NGOs, not only about NGOs. The civil society is made up of citizens. These citizens may then come into different organizational structures and organizations, including the network communities. That is why I think that the internet, we think, allows such a multi-channel influence of the citizens on the affairs of state. And if we have this substrate of the civil society, which is composed and developed through civil participation, then we will have a modicum of success. We have a big population, but very few citizens indeed, whereas the citizens is we believe, is the tissue of the civil society. It is a result of a process. So the idea of involving the citizens as individuals into, not just as associations, into the civil life would be a possibility to attain success. Alexander Shmilov from Moscow. I have just one question and one comment, but I would rather start with a comment. I think it would be more proper for this comment to have been expressed by somebody else, some representatives of the Ukraine for that matter. But because I'm observing the events in the Ukraine for the past 9 months quite closely, I think that I have a right to say something. The letters that you have read, in my feelings, I think are quite they're quite in tune with the attitudes of many people in the Donetsk region. But any assessment of the situation in the Ukraine, I think the role of Mr. Kolomoisky, the assessment of what the people might think in Kiev. Some of these letters do not seem to be in harmony with the events in the Ukraine. But this is a subjective view. Yes, an independent view. Any view of any person is subjective. All right. Yeah. No, this lady did not pretend to know the truth about the situation in the Ukraine. She's telling us about her everyday life. No, I do not debate that. I do not argue. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you for corroborating my statement. My second question is about the so-called innovations into the NGO law. Thus, in autumn, it is proposed to take a law whereby the NGOs would be divided in two groups, those which deal with civic activities and those which deal with political activities. And it appears that many things, such as monitoring of the elections and legislative proposals, are well depend and pertain to the so-called political activities, and the political NGOs will be banned from receiving any financing from abroad. They will not have any tax privileges. They will have to pay taxes on all grants and many other innovations. Could you give your evaluation? And could you say that it is evident that this law will be passed? And do you believe? Could you comment on these possible draft law? Frankly, I was asked this same question yesterday, and I could not answer this question because I have no idea about this draft law. We have never had any relation to such a draft law, even if it exists. We deal with a somewhat different topic, which is that we are indeed dealing with the state support of the socially oriented or the socially engaged civil organizations. And in that law, there is a norm about the so-called socially engaged NGOs. And we believe that such a list must be expanded. And we believe that there have to be some very specific privileges to be introduced for the NGOs. And President Putin, when he spoke before the Security Council several days ago, said that the civil society must not be subjected to repressions. Well, what you have just said is exactly a repressive draft law, but I have not heard anything about that. So the proposals by the Council are quite in line with what the President said, and we shall continue to quote him. Colleagues, I understand that many of you have not been able to ask your questions, but I have no way but to unfortunately end this session. We only have an hour for lunch, and we cannot extend this time. What we can possibly do is thank Mr. Mikhail Fedotov for coming to the school and being such a true friend. Thank you very much. I'm at your disposal. Enjoy your lunch.
Коллеги, забирайте, пожалуйста, командировочные свои подписанные договоры. Подходите ко мне.